Welcome to NFL Daily, where we've always been proud of being able to say the word Odigizua.
It's fair.
Here in the Chris Wesleyan podcast studio, I'm with my friends Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic and Colleen Wolfe.
Heyo, what's up?
See you next Tuesday. Crew is back, and Odigizua is not really a word. It's a name, and we will get to the great news for the young defensive tackle Osa Odigizua later in the show. But first, I just got to say, how are you guys doing back from Indianapolis?
I'm good. I'm on fumes at this point in the off season, but in a good way. I feel like a ultra marathon. This is about the point I get the second Cliff gel going. So we're good. We're good.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you guys know that Harry Styles ran the Japan Marathon and he did it under 3:30, which is quite an impressive time if you know marathon times. I mean, for like a normal person, that's pretty outstanding.
I mean, he's very talented in multiple areas.
Yeah.
It turns out.
Several.
I'm a little jealous. I don't know why I know that. I was told that news, and I wanted to know his time, and he was like, 20 minutes faster than I was back doing the San Diego Marathon in like 2009.
20 minutes faster. I love that you're comparing.
I was going to say, you compared yourself to Harry Styles in this phase.
Because my time was solid, like 3:47. You know,
play.
that's a solid time getting in under 4 hours, but he crushed me.
I think with anything in life, it is dangerous to compare yourself to Harry Styles.
That's fair. That's what the saying is.
You were hosting the combine inside the stadium,
Sure
Colleen.
was.
I was not there. Nick Shook was there representing NFL Daily. How was that? What
It was fun.
that?
It was me, Cynthia, and Reggie Wayne. And I wasn't really sure what to expect with it. And we had so much fun. It was that was my best combine experience, because once I realized that we just could mess around with each other and people that were there, like I'm like, scouts, let me hear you. Like it was very.
That's amazing. They're waving their stopwatches around.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Reggie Wayne is literally a coach on the Colts, and he has this gig. That's wild.
I love that for him.
He used to work here a few years ago, and so I haven't worked with him since then. So it was fun to reunite with Reggie, and then got back to LA, and this morning I dropped off Kima at Good Girl School, so she's gonna do a little board and train. And
I saw she was showing off her vertical jump,
my
much
God.
like other prospects.
Okay, I am sitting at Combine
This is your
during
new
the
dog,
drills.
Kima
is my new dog. I rescued her from a high kill shelter, the Pound, right here in LA, and she had everything wrong with her. I did not know that she was this athletic, and I get a call. I ignored it because I didn't know the number, and I see the voicemail popping up on my phone. And it says, I think we have your dog in our backyard. Can you give me a call back? I'm in Indianapolis. And I'm like, oh my God. So I call, and I'm like, yeah, you have Kima, great. She was supposed to be with a dog sitter. She must have got out. Let me call the dog sitter. And so then I call the dog sitter, and she's like beside herself. I'm like, okay, everything's going to be fine here. She was like, I just didn't think that there was any way a dog could escape our yard. We have 6-foot fences. And then she sent me photos of Kima hopping the 6-foot fence.
Dang.
With
God.
no problem whatsoever.
Oh my gosh.
So, she could be a show dog at some point, but she discovers
she's going in the first.
Loves to jump.
Right. She could do some training. I forget what receiver it was, had like an embarrassingly low vertical, like Kima.
She's got hops.
So when you say you're sending her to Good Girl School, you're really sending her to Exos Training Facility in Phoenix, Arizona, is what I'm hearing.
Good Girl School.
That would be amazing. Also, if anyone who picks the people for NFL events, which is how you do these, you do it internationally, you do the Super Bowl. I know I'm quote unquote unattractive and my voice is quote unquote annoying.
Well, with
but
that attitude,
I'm available.
Don't talk about my friend Gregg
I'm available. I feel like it's always all women. It's a lot of women and ex-players. How about some?
There's so many women in sports, Greg.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
we
why
gotta-
won't a man just come and take some woman's opportunity? Wouldn't that be nice?
We got to balance this out. I think we need to balance this out. We got a big show. A lot of news happened on Tuesday. We were going to hold the show and post it overnight, but there's too much news. It's hot. We got to get it out there.
Right now.
It's hot.
It's really happening for the next week and a half. 2 weeks, news every day. The deluge has begun. So we will do all of that news, and we will also preview the offseason in the AFC North. But let's start where we do so often on Tuesdays, it feels like, with Sam Darnold. The franchise tag deadline, it's passed. Only 2 guys got tagged, T. Higgins and Trey Smith. We kind of knew that was happening. Sam Darnold did not get one, and there's a lot of reporting around him not getting one, Colleen, that indicates there's a decent chance he could return to Minnesota.
I think he probably will return to Minnesota. They weren't comfortable with the $40 million tag, so they're trying to get a deal done for less than that. The problem is with Sam Darnold, the market right now, there's not a lot of options of veteran quarterbacks, and the draft is pretty light on quarterbacks, and there's a lot of quarterback needy teams. We're talking Titans, Browns, Giants, Raiders, Jets, Steelers, and the market is like Aaron Rodgers and whatever happens with Russell Wilson and Jimmy G, Justin Fields, and we'll talk about Justin Fields and the Steelers situation in the AFC North preview. However, I just feel like it's a little tough unless Sam Darnold really wants to come back to Minnesota and play with KOC, because him and Kevin O'Connell, that's where he had his best football. And yeah, it was a shaky end of the season, but the larger sample size was still very good.
Yeah, I think this is a win-win. I think if he ultimately, we don't know where JJ McCarthy's at in terms of not just his rehab, but just getting like physically ready to come back in as this team starter in Minnesota, could potentially be an opportunity for Sam Darnold to like wash clean the last 2 games, come out with a couple strong games next season, early in the season, or even in the preseason, and ramp back up the trade potential for him for Minnesota. I also think that this is a win-win for both sides, because if the tag for 1 year was at 40 was too rich for the Vikings, they could be kind of looking at the framework of that Baker Mayfield extension previously, where it was 3 for 100, but it was really only 40 guaranteed at signing and 50 guaranteed overall. You obviously don't want to just do that for 1 year. You want to do that for multiple years with a quarterback. If you are going to pay them that much money in one lump sum, you don't want to sit in a tag situation for about the same for way less time. And I do think that it gives them flexibility. And plus, Sam Darnold clearly thrives there. There was some reporting that other teams were actually not interested in him as the quarterback.
The Raiders
heated up. Yeah, my colleagues Vic Tafer and Tashawn Reed reported that last week. And so I think it's like, okay, you're sort of looking at the lay of the land here, and you're like a tag and trade, or excuse me, a non-tag, and instead the potential of a trade. And I feel like there's a healthy enough relationship between Sam Darnold and KOC, for example, to be able to have that dialogue, to be like, yeah, listen, we want you to thrive and succeed and set up your future. You can do it with us. We might move you eventually for JJ.
I wonder if there just isn't as big a market for Darnold as people would expect, because he's the best youngish option out there. But that doesn't mean, first of all, I think we know no one's given up picks and money for him, or else I think that would have happened. Like maybe someone would give up a 4th or a 5th or something. If they could have gotten a 2nd or a 3rd, I think they would have just done it. They would have tagged and traded him, or they would have. So that's not happening. And then you have to have someone that really loves you, or he's going to be in that middle sort of area where, like, yeah, Tennessee, I think, could be a potential option, but they might have the number 1 overall draft pick. So how much are they really, at quarterback, how much are they really going to pay? You go down the list, like, would he fit with Stefanski in Cleveland? You just have to find someone that really loves you, and he might not find anyone that loves him more than the Vikings. There's kind of been...
Or us.
Or Colleen.
He's not going to find anyone that loves him more.
I mean, those last 2 games really hurt him. Mike Silver, another one of your colleagues, said he believed that Darnold was coming back if it wasn't for those last 2 games. And that even despite those last 2 games, like, there's a decent chance.
I think he's coming back.
They do love him.
I think that.
What does that say about JJ McCarthy? Does it say anything?
Well, I mean, the injury, it's a long timeline for recovery, but then also on-ramping and back up. I mean, we're still so far away from spring practices, from them getting, an understanding of where he's at. He looked great last preseason, near the end of the preseason, but we're still kind of a long way away from really having any understanding or intel publicly on where he's at. The team would obviously have that.
There's also a torn meniscus, internally. But he had to have a follow-up surgery,
yeah,
which is
and
a bad sign.
The other thing, though, I think this is smart that other teams are letting this play out the way that it is versus kind of scrambling over themselves to secure their quarterback in Sam Darnold before the draft happens, because they're also letting the Vikings establish Sam's market. These other teams are, because he's going to be most likely negotiating with them for a potential extension because he wasn't tagged. Other teams are sort of sitting back and letting the Vikings tell us what Sam Darnold is worth. And if you already have a contract framework, it's easier to trade for that player.
It's really crazy that Sam Darnold is at the top of the free agent quarterback list. I mean, I guess you guys are putting him there, right?
Yeah, I would.
But only because of Aaron Rodgers' personality.
That's the only his personality
and his age. Like everything
It's
that he
not you,
brings
it's your
up.
personality.
I actually think if you stripped everything out of it and it was just football, I would take Aaron Rodgers.
Really?
Because I'm just thinking about it as a 1-year thing. I'm not thinking Darnold's going to be my long-term solution. So maybe
Aaron Rodgers over Russell Wilson, Justin Fields.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But you can't strip that out. It's the quarterback. You can't strip out everything that he brings. So I wouldn't want to deal with that whole everything. And so, yeah, I would rather so Darnold would be next on my list. But I think Rodgers was playing pretty well enough by the end of the season. And I think they're both a little bit of a mystery bag of like, they're not everything you want. So either way, they're short-term solutions.
Can you imagine if Aaron Rodgers went to Minnesota and then just like follows the exact Brett Favre?
It's really not
journey?
that crazy, actually, because I don't necessarily think this says much about how they feel about J.J. McCarthy. It's just he's a 21-year-old kid coming off of an injury. Of course, you can't just count on everything to be fine. What if he gets re-injured? Then your season's over. Like, you have to have another decent veteran option, and Darnold makes the most sense for them.
And this is like the best problem for a team to have, really, if you're Minnesota. Similarly with Atlanta, I was talking to someone over there and just trying to get some insight a little bit more into Mike Penix and kind of what we can expect from him this year. And the overwhelming theme was, man, this is not stressful. This is so much less stressful because we have a quarterback. So it's better to have a quarterback, even if the first one didn't quite work out, or even if there's a little bit of a messiness and logistics to figure out. Having the quarterback is always better than not having the quarterback.
It's so funny. I was talking to a head coach and he was saying how easy this combine was compared to years past when he didn't have a quarterback, and now he has a quarterback and it's a breeze. It's like it's a walk in the park now.
I mean, we got Jourdan talking to Falcon sources. You're talking to head coaches. Meanwhile, I'm just asking NFL events to love me. Like, just sitting
maybe you
here.
need to put yourself out there more.
I guess so. Let's move on to your team, Saquon Barkley. Surprising news. On Tuesday, signed a 2-year extension worth $41 million, $36 million guaranteed. How about this? They didn't have to give him
They didn't. But they did.
That's pretty badass.
And that's what Howie Roseman does.
Early. Yeah.
Early, exactly.
2 years early. He had 2 years left on his contract. This was just like, hey, man, that was the best season we've ever seen.
He earned it. He deserves it. And it also is great for the entire running back market. Like, this all came full circle with running backs mattering. He got paid that much. Now the Eagles and Howie have set a new precedent for running backs. And yeah, he's locked up till 2028. And a lot of the Eagles' offensive core are also locked in until 2028. So it's kind of crazy. He also has $15 million in incentives so he can make even more money.
Wow.
Love
So
that
let's see.
for him.
I went and checked. He had 26 guaranteed last year. It's basically the whole contract was guaranteed. And then 36 this year. 36 is easily the most ever for a running back in terms of guaranteed money. So that's 52. And let's normalize this. We didn't have to give you a big raise, but you so far exceeded what you were actually worth. We're going to reward you for it. That almost never happens in the NFL. Max Crosby actually got a similar type of thing last year from the Raiders.
It almost never happens anywhere.
Right.
You know what?
So true.
You know what I feel like? I love what Howie Roseman and Alec Halaby do when they find outliers, right? They find these outlier situations. I would not say that teams should just all in flood toward the running back market the way that this is sort of the flag set in the sand saying like, okay, this is where the market is now. I think that Howie Roseman is gifted in forcing people to mistake where markets really are because he can capitalize on outlier players. And this is that situation where just because it's Saquon Barkley, who's one of the best we've ever seen, and particularly in this last season, does not mean now that every running back will or should get paid. Of course. And I know that's what we're all saying, but it is interesting because he will force the market to deviate that way. And he can, because he's forced it, he can predict when it will next shift and find the zag to hit when everyone else is zigging toward what they did.
And he creates cap flexibility with the move as well. So it's a win-win.
That's huge. You know, there is a world in which Saquon Barkley feels I'm trying to do the math in my head.
He's underpaid.
If you include the 100 touches that he had in the postseason, almost, he is well over 450, 470 touches last season. It's one of the biggest workloads anyone's ever had in the history. And the numbers for guys with that big a workload are sometimes not kind, but it doesn't matter. He earned all that money. I just hope he can hold up to that. And I don't think you can ask him to have that sort of workload, which was way far and beyond what he had ever done previously, year after year. So
he had fresh legs.
I hope they bring back. I guess they don't need to bring back Kenny Gainwell if they like Will Shipley, but just
so far
spread it around a little bit.
So far, one of the real winners of free agency and the season is Colleen Wolfe. I mean, can we just say,
it's going great.
Right. If the Colts had just won a few more games, you'd really be on top of things. But it has been a good.
I'm back in on the Colts again after being at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Darnold's gonna have a nice cushy spot for himself with a paycheck. The Eagles are excellent and forcing markets to move. And again, I love this for Colin.
And like the Sixers, once they brought in Paul George, it was like, wow, we've got our big three. We're going to contend for a title. Maybe we'll take out the Celtics. We've got the star power to do it.
Greg, go do an NFL event.
Let's talk about the Jets. They cut Davante Adams. Expected that to happen. Trade didn't happen. Too big of a salary. I love that.
Landing spots.
Any landing spots?
Yes.
Do we have any spots we'd like to put Davante Adams? Let me announce actually where he has landed on the top 101. I put him right ahead of Amari Cooper.
Smart.
Behind Chris Godwin, behind some of the top tier cornerbacks like DJ Reed, Charvarius Ward. But that is 12th overall. That is pretty, because there's not really quality starting receivers available. And to me, he is that. So with that in mind, any landing spots?
Yeah. So I was thinking he could go to the Giants and just stay in New York. Now that
especially
Aaron
if Rodgers goes there.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
And then you pair him up with Malik Neighbors. So that would be cool. And then Rams, he's from the area, like Palo Alto, which, it's not that close, but maybe he wants to get back to California. He's all the way on the East Coast. It's cold there. They have the sun here. And then especially if they end up trading Cooper Kupp, then they can pair him with Puka Nacua. And the other one I thought maybe were the Patriots, and he could reunite with Josh McDaniels from their time in Vegas together. And New England has a ton of cap space to play with, and they want to build around Drake May.
Yeah, got to get that dynamic duo back together, McDaniels and Davante.
Everyone's
I guess
talking
actually,
about it.
He did produce. I shouldn't be.
If the 49, the West Coast thing is real. Ian Rappaport was talking about that earlier today. So the 49ers, I think, if they do move Ayuk, I do think that they'll be in on this. I think that they're looking to kind of overhaul some of their situation with Brock Purdy. Now, they're not going to be as flexible as other teams to actually make this happen. But yes, Colleen, great spot there. The Rams, I think, would be interested, depend if he's cheap. And then also the Los Angeles Chargers should be interested. They should be on the phone trying to get this guy to pair him with Justin Herbert again at the right number.
And Lad McConkey.
Chargers.
On the outside.
And Lightning Lad.
Yes.
Chargers desperately need a wide receiver. It's crazy. I really think the 49ers are going to have a weird, wild off season. Really, like the next couple weeks could be strange for them.
Also, he could go back to Green Bay.
Well, while we're on the Rams, we will mention there was a trade.
That.
I said that, we're going to have a little trade tsunami this offseason. It hasn't started quite yet, but the Rams sent Jonah Jackson. If you remember, Jonah Jackson was a big free agent pickup, a lot of money. They're just eating that money, but they did get the Bears to take on his $9 million in fully guaranteed salary in 2025. They get a 6th-round pick back. So we talked to Ryan Poles last week. He said he was going to get some interior linemen. He got one for a reasonable price.
Yeah, Greg, we did talk to Ryan Poles. Actually, we have a photo of the three of us speaking. The three of us.
This happens to me all the time. She's cut out of the photo.
So the photo has a brutal crop. You do see my sleeve in the corner. This is the photo Gregg Rosenthal
Is it
posted.
the gray one?
You know, I can
it's-
explain this.
It's the little green splotch you see in the corner over there.
yeah.
YouTube.
There you
go
are.
Check this out. Now, actually, I want to diagnose this, Greg, because my favorite part of this brutal crop in this photo is
I didn't crop it. The NFL media cropped it. That's what they sent.
The caption that says parentheses.
Pick from whatever.
From when I was there.
Okay, you're not in this show was why it seemed confusing. Unfortunately, this interview was.
I was in the interview.
We didn't. I didn't have a pick that made sense to send out. So I just was like, here's one from Indianapolis.
That's my favorite moment from the combine, to be quite honest.
But we're just holding you accountable.
NFL media cropped you. We did have some other ones.
Look at him
with you in
shifting
it.
the blame. Good luck getting an event now. You just blamed NFL media.
Well, that's different.
Ryan Poles did talk to us about how he was really ready to spend and invest in overhauling this offensive line. Obviously, their interior was a disaster. Jonah Jackson can play guard, or actually can play center as well. Kind of depends on where they'll want to put him.
He played both guard spots, right?
Yeah, he played. Well, he can play both guard spots, but last year he played both left guard and center, and he has familiarity with Ben Johnson. And a source told me that he is taking on the Bears are taking on his salary. So that was really why the Rams wanted to offload him. Was they signed him to a 3-year, $51 million contract to not play.
Well, and he was a disaster for them. Ultimately, it's unfortunate, but he'll be motivated to get better, and it's a system that he knows well with Ben Johnson. Makes sense for for everyone. Good move, because ultimately $9 million actually isn't that much money for like a 1-year deal, and there's just not any guards that are going to be available in the free agency period. But there will be in the draft. The Cowboys signed Osa Odigizua to a 4-year, $80 million contract, $58 million of that guaranteed. You know, the insiders are all patting the Cowboys on the back. Oh, they're saving money, and they're saving money that they didn't have to tag him. It's like, yeah, you could have signed him much earlier and saved a lot more money. So I'm not going to give them that much credit, but it is a step in the right direction that they're not letting these contracts go until the very last minute. So like a small,
they're learning
little golf
baby
clap.
steps. Come on. Like, you don't just automatically go that route. Like, you have to slowly, I think,
They had to find a pen, they haven't used theirs in a while.
Exactly.
It's tricky. Defensive tackles, they develop so slowly that a lot of times their 4th year, they really break out, and then it kind of catches the team not unawares, but their value goes up a ton. Madubuike was a good recent example. Dexter Lawrence was another one. Like Chris Jones, guys who they really don't improve till their 4th year. And Odigizua was in the top 5 in total pressures. He fits that Eberflus offense. So that is a good move. I'm making fun of the Cowboys, but that's
Parsons
smart.
Up next.
Yes, and they didn't have to, per year, they did get it under what the franchise number would have been. Just another couple quick items. The Eagles released James Bradberry.
After Darius Slay.
Tough that he will be remembered for the penalty, that a little questionable call in the Super Bowl.
He's an all-pro. He switched from safety when the cornerback room was filled to the gills.
Yeah.
He's turned into a mentor for the younger players. Yeah, that's what I'm going to remember, Greg.
I don't remember him playing any safety. That was like a story, but he just sort of watched. I don't know why I'm being mean to James Bradberry. I love James Bradberry.
Well, it's all right. You're internalizing and lashing out.
Yes,
fine.
I think that is what it is. I had him super high on the top 101 a few years ago.
What about Bradberry?
The Jets are letting Alan Lazard seek a trade, so he might be cut. Brandon McManus quietly solved the years-long Packers kicker issue last year, and so they signed him to a 3-year deal. The Seahawks cut Draymond Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, Rayshon Jenkins, and George Fant. Draymond Jones was very high on my top 101 a couple of years ago and was a total bust for the Seahawks. Not the profile of guys who are typically busts in free agency. Like, he was a young ascending player, but he did not play well for them at all. I'm not even going to put him on my top 101. It really worked out so poorly over there. And then finally, in the news, just quickly, there was a report by Front Office Sports that Bill Belichick and UNC were going to be the new season of Hard Knocks, which I was waiting to have my take on, which was the world does not need more Michael Lombardi on our television screen. And it turns out that's not going to happen. It's not happening. Like, they couldn't close the deal. NFL media actually released a statement about it that it's not going to happen. I don't know why, but
We all lose out.
Man, how Hard Knocks has fallen since last season. And I always enjoy it. I understand that it's sort of like a cursed gift here at this point.
The off-season one, if it turns out to be one and done, was a great enterprise. It was a great effort. Mm-hmm. I think people are almost over, counting how much the Giants look bad in it, but because it was interesting. There were a lot of things about it that were just like compelling television that wasn't making Joe Schoen look like an idiot.
It was
but there was that too.
There were executives like having these group chats together saying like, okay, what did you think? Was that as bad as it seemed to us? Like, we would never want that. Like, not judging them per se, but saying like, man, how could you say yes to this in the future if that's going to happen?
Yeah, and I think it would have been interesting, all jokes aside, to watch this UNC thing, but it didn't get off the ground, unfortunately. You know what did? Our division preview series, we're going to do that after the break. I can't wait to talk a little AFC North. Maybe the best division in football. Maybe. Except they have the Browns.
That kind of pulls them down a bit.
Back on NFL Daily. I don't know if you heard, Colleen.
What?
Jourdan. We're running like a sleeker, more efficient NFL Daily here in the offseason.
Okay.
We're trying.
That sounds efficient. But like chic, maybe? I don't know.
Bikini bod for spring.
No, more like I'm trying to keep the show to double digits. Like 50 minutes instead, or under an hour. An hour.
Good luck. Where are we at right now?
That's what we've been doing. We're going to do the AFC North. We're going to look ahead to the offseason. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show, too. We're going to talk about free agents we are really looking for, but this will be more team-centered. I will start. Let's put 5 minutes on the clock for the Cleveland Browns. They have the number two overall pick, of course. They have an extra third-round pick because of that Amari Cooper trade. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They randomly have 5 sixth-round picks. I just wanted to point that out. And they are $23 million over the cap. So they're in as much trouble as any team in terms of cap space. They have a lot going on that we can get into, but I will start the conversation just with the question because I think it informs everything we talk about with them. How much do they want to blow it up? Because there are levels to it, but there are a lot of players on this team that are aging and have high cap numbers. Like, do they kind of blow it up? Do they not blow it up at all? How much do they want to blow it up?
And their best player is demanding to be traded.
Well, that too, yeah.
To leave. So that leaves massive holes at quarterback, also running back because Nick Chubb is a free agent too, and he broke his foot in week 15. And wide receiver, and they have no money. So there's like, I think you have to blow it up.
Yeah, they actually are going to, I think, open up almost $40 million in additional money once they again restructure the contract they never should have signed with Deshaun Watson. So that still won't be like a ton of flexibility to the point where it's not dramatic enough a change to not consider like legitimately, like you guys are saying, blowing this thing up, recouping some picks for Myles Garrett. I know that Andrew Berry has been super emphatic both at the podium and then inside scrums with reporters about how they're not trading him. But when you're looking at your books over the next couple of years, when you're deciding if you do like or even love one of these young quarterbacks that are coming up in the draft class, or even the proposition of acquiring a bridge and then getting to next year, like you are looking at potentially a multi-year overhaul. And I think once they face the reality of that, you're going to start to see them finally shed that dead weight that they have. Yeah,
and you mentioned Andrew Berry being emphatic, and that's true with his words. But I heard the great Danny Heifetz refer to Andrew Berry as an energy vampire.
Oh, no.
He had 3 different GMs, I believe, that were just sort of sucks the life out of a press conference or the room that he's in. And I hear that. The reality is they've sucked the life out of this organization. This is one of the greatest fan bases ever, and it's tough to root for them. Part of the reason I'm asking if they should blow it up or not is because here's a list of the players that I think qualify as like, do they make sense on a longer timeline? Garrett, you get a ton of picks for him. Mm-hmm. Jack Conklin, that's more just a money and injury thing, but he is up there and has had a ton of injuries, big salary. Joel Bitonio, who is considering retirement, so that might be more up to him, big salary. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, that's just unfortunate. He's coming back from a big injury. They just have to kind of wait and see. That could be like a career-threatening thing. Denzel Ward, who said he wants to leave with Myles Garrett if Garrett goes. And then there's always a question of these cornerbacks, Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome. So it's just a lot of different players. They also have some free agents. You mentioned Chubb, Jameis Winston's a free agent, Elijah Moore, Jedrick Wills. I would expect all of those guys to leave. One thing they do have, though, Colleen, is it a pretty good defense, and like they're all coming back on paper. So there is another route where you move up to draft Cam Ward one spot instead, and you keep Myles Garrett, and suddenly like that's your future.
You have to be in love with Cam Ward, though, and it sounds like it's just not as strong of a quarterback class at all as years past. And so then you're moving up, which means you're losing draft capital when you really need it. I think that they should move back, get some picks, and then blow the whole thing up. I mean, they are so far over the cap at this point, and it's for a bad team. So it's not even like they're spending a lot of money and it's paying off. It feels like forever ago they were in the playoffs with Joe Flacco.
I know. It just as an aside, if they cut Deshaun Watson right now, they would have $172 million in dead money.
Woo, party. You know what? I would almost say all of these moves or potential moves have to happen in tandem. You can't half-ass any of this. Forgive my French. I feel like you have to, if you're going to decide you're going to move from Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, you also in tandem have to commit to probably trading back that second overall pick, because then you could recoup even more capital, gut and completely overhaul your roster top to bottom, and think about quarterback next year and sign a veteran and a bridge this year. But all of it has to happen together. You can't just do one or another. Trade Myles Garrett and then see if you can maybe get lucky for Cam Ward. It just won't work like that. I think they have to fully commit to ripping the Band-Aid off.
My guess is they try to win because the GM and coach will be fired if they think long term. So I don't think they will blow it up. Let's talk about a team that does not need to blow it up. It's always in the mix, but maybe not as much as their fans want them to be. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Colleen Wolfe, get us going.
All right, they have the 21st overall pick. They also have picks in the second and third round. Nothing in the fourth, though. And for them, it's the same question that they had last year at this very time. Once again, who is your quarterback? Like, I know Ian Rappaport came out with the report that they're leaning heavily towards Justin Fields, that he's probably likely the quarterback of the Steelers, more likely than Russell Wilson, which the team already sort of chose Russell Wilson over Justin Fields. At least they did that last year, and then they finished the season 0-5, including that playoff game. But I guess Justin Fields would be a cheaper option for them. It's just, I don't know if either option is actually good.
This is just a small aside, but what was your favorite moment from the last two Pittsburgh Steelers playoff appearances? Like,
damn.
I just mean, like, has any team been in the playoffs and been more forgetful? If you're watching on YouTube, our guy,
Thank
behind
God
the
that's
scenes,
where you're going with
Chris is doing great work with the graphics, and it says defeated by the Ravens 28-14. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot they were in the playoffs, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, sort of just an entrance and then an exit with a whimper. The only number I think that they should be looking at when it comes to Justin Fields, who potentially could be very much a cheaper option, is that he turns 26 years old on March 5th. We are recording on March 4th. So obviously he is still super, super young. And I think stats, whatever, you have a guy who is, who you understand the locker room's reaction to him. And I think that you have to just commit to a young player who still has, in my opinion, untapped potential, who is, again, only 26 years old.
Mm-hmm. They also have a similar issue at running back because both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are free agents.
Jaylen Warren's restricted
free agent. He would be obviously the cheaper option there. Wide receiver doesn't look great. Mike Williams was a non-factor, so he'll be out. George Pickens is on the last year of his rookie deal. Mm-hmm. Van Jefferson's a free agent. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of the ball, their passing defense. Like, their overall defense was good, but their pass coverage was the liability for them. And their number 2 quarterback, Dante Jackson, is a free agent. Mm-hmm. They could probably upgrade at nickel too, but they have quite a few places where they need some upgrades.
Now they have $59 million in cap space, so they are.
Some of that's going to go to TJ Watt, who apparently is looking for a new contract.
That's a lot. That's more than they can spend, and they're not traditionally huge spenders. They're kind of like middle to lower tier spenders in free agency, but they could use a cornerback, like an Asante Samuel Jr. or a DJ Reed. Like this would be a spot to go for it. Left tackle could be a spot. Broderick Jones, they drafted a couple years ago. He hasn't played well for them. And then, they have some other key free agents. James Daniels actually played well for them when he was at guard, but I think they're going to let him go. They're going young there. Najee Harris, you mentioned Dan Moore, their left tackle. He's probably gone. Cam Sutton was another guy who played a lot for them. And then I threw out the possibility a couple weeks ago. I don't know. Just keep an eye on Minkah Fitzpatrick. You just get a sense.
You got a feeling.
You just get a sense that like there's something.
It's time.
Funky there. But the Steelers always have the same needs. It's always their cornerbacks, and it's always like their lately it's their wide receiver depth. They actually have solved mostly their
quarterback
offensive line and quarterback.
I was just thinking, what if Derek Carr ends up becoming available?
Derek Carr and Art Smith. Interesting.
I believe the Saints. We hadn't talked about this. I'm glad you brought it up in the show. I believe the Saints at the Combine, Mickey Loomis, they didn't have a podium session, but they talked to their local reporter. They were about as strong as possible that Derek Carr is definitely their quarterback. And you never know.
No one lies.
It's line season.
I love rumor season, and I hate it too.
In this case, I believe him because he's always been Mickey Loomis's guy, and I think they're going to kick the can. But that would make some sense, and yet I do like the Fields thing.
I'd keep an eye on former Jets corner, pending free agent DJ Reed as a potential fit with the Steelers, again, who do need help in their defensive backfield. I think Stephon Diggs is kind of a sneaky fit for the Steelers. If they do lose Van Jefferson, you're going to need sort of a downfield threat. You're going to need a player who can do that. They need to overhaul that room and partner I think the right people with George Pickens. People who can come in and sort of say, hey, this is being a pro. This is what we do. They've obviously kept that together by a thread, like they often do until now. And I do think that, Stephon Diggs, when he kind of goes into that mercenary mode, he can really elevate. He can really thrive.
Yeah, their other two wide receivers on the roster are Calvin Austin, who's kind of a gadget player, and Roman Wilson, who was a third-round pick a year ago. Let's move on to the Bengals. Fascinating team.
Jeez.
Put the 5 minutes on the clock for Jourdan.
There are so many infrastructural questions with the Cincinnati Bengals, some of which are happening on the field, some of which are happening off the field in terms of the ongoing stadium negotiation. The big question on the field for the Bengals is who will they actually pay / extend? And, they could still trade T. Higgins, even though he got the tag. I would actually love to be a fly on the wall wondering like how he really felt about that, getting the tag. But Trey Hendrickson, still up in the air. Jamar Chase, still up in the air. And Duke Tobin was at the Combine last week talking about how he expects to make Jamar Chase, quote unquote, the highest paid receiver in football, which could have been done already.
And they will say, hey, we saved the money by not giving him that money last year. That's sort of how the Bengals operate. In terms of their free agents, they have spent a lot of cash, to be fair, and not well necessarily lately. I do think Jamar Chase gets that money. The rest of it, I have no idea. They're a very difficult team to predict.
Yeah, because also Mike Gesicki is a free agent as well. That's a huge deal. I feel like that's kind of under the radar and getting lost in the mix here with all of these big name stars that are trying to get new deals. And Trey Hendrickson, this defense is an absolute mess. He is the one that held anything together. He was the silver lining last year, and all three levels need help. I just don't know. They're going to have to pay him, or they don't, and then they draft his replacement. But that's tough, that defense.
Yeah, I think he's kind of on that fringe right now where you look at a Trey Hendrickson and you think, okay, is there anything that we could potentially get out of this here at age 30 with so many other players that are needed? With T. Higgins, you might kind of look at that too, although that would really piss Joe Burrow off as it stands currently based on his public commentary. They have so many issues at every single level, especially on their defense, but then they have some sneaky things they need to fix on offense. They have to shore up their guards. They obviously have to figure out, what's going to happen at tight end. The receivers are the looming question for everything, and they have pick number 17, so that's a very tradable, probably backwards pick. There are a couple really good tight ends that might be available at that pick point. They have 6 picks total and about $43 million in cap space as it stands right now, but you have to think some significant portion of that is already sort of being set aside right now.
Yeah, and I think with them and a lot of these teams that have owners, and you mentioned the stadium issue, but these old school owners that maybe aren't as cash rich as some of the newer ones, is they could have cap space, but if you're paying that Jamar Chase signing bonus this offseason and you're paying the T. Higgins, you do got to figure it out. I kind of think you trade either T or Hendrickson. Maybe it's awful to say, but I think they could survive without either one of them. I mean, Trey only because he is 30. If you can get a second round pick for Trey Hendrickson, I kind of think like it's not that crazy to me.
Yeah.
And then Higgins, he's a secondary receiver. Ultimately, you have your one. Can you really pay both of them? Maybe you can, but that seems tough.
I think it's a good point to make that maybe Trey Hendrickson is the player that you could move off from, because if you kind of look at it, and I sort of visualize it in my mind like a little bit of a psychopath as like just this big picture where all these little dots are standing, right? And so you have a massive dot that several other dots can fit inside of, and that is Trey Hendrickson.
It's like a solar system.
And so you just
like the NGS dots that go down the field.
When you disperse that massive dot that all these other dots can fit inside of, all those other dots are reallocating across the entirety of the defense, essentially. So basically, how many other things can this one massive thing get us? And that to me is what Trey Hendrickson represents at his age. And I know that my brain is a weird place, but
we should all microdose.
It's
I'm just kidding.
It is really like, how can this giant, basically, asset
minus 1 minute
get us a bunch of other assets that we desperately need?
I can't believe they're in this position in the first place. It's not like this came as some surprise, like, oh my God, all 3 are up right now. Like, they could have avoided this, and now it is their biggest problem.
Although I'm glad they didn't just let T walk. That would have been crazy. So you mentioned Mike Gesicki. Trent Brown, by the way, is also a free agent. I don't think they'll bring him back. That didn't work out. Mike Hilton and BJ Hill, who have been very productive role players for them, are free agents. Some moves they could make. They could cut Jermaine Pratt, kind of expect that to happen. He had asked for a trade. One of the many people who'd asked for a trade. I think they'll cut Sam Hubbard, but who's been a starter there for a while and really struggled last year. But then if you cut Sam Hubbard and you don't have Trey Hendrickson, you don't have any defensive ends, you have a really young secondary. They're a team I think could add. There's so many good safeties available. Like just
Von Bell's a free agent.
Add like a adult in the room. Justin Reed. Just bring Justin Reed in. I would like that.
Cool.
Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens, wrapping up the AFC North. Put that 5 minutes on the clock. $12 million in cap space, so right in the middle. That's actually lower middle. They have, as they always do, 1 million compensatory picks. I just love Ozzie Newsome's compensatory pick game. An extra 4th, 2 5ths, and a 6th, all compensatory. They just do that every year. Their key free agents, we've talked about some of them. 2 offensive linemen, Ronnie Stanley and Patrick Macari, who to me was better as a swing tackle than he was as their starting guard. But either way, that's 2 spots that are opening up. Other than that, not too much. Nelson Aguilar and Brandon Staley. My question is actually more about the offense. What did I say?
You said Brandon Staley.
Oh, I was thinking of Brandon Stevens.
You imagine if
Brandon Stevens. I was like, wait.
Imagine if Brandon Staley was an offensive lineman.
I don't think he would do well, but Brandon Stevens, who struggled mostly as a young starter, also a free agent. Good call. My question is actually about the offense. Todd Monken's been there for 2 years. Mm-hmm. It's gone really well, but I do think after you've run an offense for a couple years, you have to keep reinventing yourself. So with the issues they have on the offensive line, like what do they do to make Monken, Lamar 2.0 remain the best offense in the league? I don't think they can just kind of run it back.
I wonder if they end up getting a running back to help spell some of the carries.
That'd be good.
Derrick Henry. That would be like an option for them, because it feels like otherwise it's going to be kind of a relatively quiet offseason for them because of looking at what they need. They don't have like a ton of glaring needs like all of the other teams that we've talked about. I think that Ronnie Stanley is like their biggest question.
Yeah, I think they might be able to get Ronnie Stanley back because he's been very clear. I mean, he even took a pay cut last year and to stay with the Ravens, and he's made it very clear he wants to be a Baltimore Raven for life. He obviously works really well with Lamar, had his best season, his only healthy season this past year. And I think that in part you saw some of the guard tackle market move a little bit even before free agency started because people understood that maybe this is a foregone conclusion and now he's one of the best available.
The Rams, you mean, like re-signing Alec Jackson?
Because other teams would have upped his market, understanding that maybe Ronnie is already spoken for. And so I think that this is an interesting situation. In terms of the offense, I like that they were a lot of different things last year, some of it by necessity at the beginning when Lamar was really going run heavy by himself. He was doing a lot of the option stuff and really didn't look like he fully trusted his receivers. I think continuing to improve that receiving core and continuing to add dimension in that way, multiple layers of the passing game and flow everything out of that run game, the way that you really saw him do it in really positive spurts last season. There are a million different ways you're going to be able to do this if you're Todd Monken with Lamar Jackson, and I think continuing to develop that trust specifically with the receivers is important.
I think you need another receiver.
Yep.
Zay is not a real one.
I can see him drafting.
Zay Flowers is a great part of a whole, and he was a Pro Bowler this year. Don't get me wrong, he was like great, but you need other types of receivers around him. You have Rashad Bateman. There's been some talk that they could cut Mark Andrews. I don't see that happening. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think that makes sense.
Not after the drop in the playoffs. That would be so rough.
That would be. I didn't even think of that. They could save $12 million, but he played well down the stretch last year, other than, that game. They have Isaiah Likely. They could cut Marcus Williams, who's been a bit of a free agent bust for them, but they don't really save much, so they might just bring him to camp. And then I looked at Odafe Owe. They could extend him. Do you want to extend him? They actually don't have many good young players to extend, which is not a great sign, a little surprising. Their needs, to me, are actually more on defense. I just thought talking offense would be interesting, and they need some edge defenders. They need an outside cornerback. They are not afraid to be aggressive, to kind of swoop in and take like a lower cost free agent that's available at the end of free agency. So I think they could be pretty active. They could use a cornerback as well.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a good cornerback market for sort of that second and third tier corners. I saw a lot of them ranked in the middle to latter parts of Gregg Rosenthal's Drew Rosenhaus approved top 100 and one.
That's right.
And I do think that if you're a team that does need immediate help, if you're in contention, if you need a quick patch, especially in the secondary, this is a really great free agency.
Your guy, Big Play Slay, now available. Actually, he seems like such a Raven. Like a 1 year, $5 million contract that they sign him to in April, and then he's out there in the AFC Championship game making plays. And you're like, why didn't anyone else sign him?
Akella Witherspoon's another one who, to me, seems like he would be a good fit over there.
Yeah.
You're too good, Baltimore Ravens.
4.
Yeah.
And we love you for it.
Come back to the pack. Ravens fans are like, can we make a Super Bowl?
Maybe next year.
That would make a happy Patrick Claybon. I would love to do a post AFC Championship game podcast with the Ravens going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, that'd be
with
cool.
Patrick.
Yeah. That would be a beautiful thing to listen to.
To be in Baltimore for it would be cool.
Last show, we listened to Ron Wolfe announce the Arizona Cardinals making the Super Bowl for the first and only time. And it gave me chills like that moment. We're so far away from that moment. And yet...
it'll come so quick.
And yet football is so bad.
Right. And I was going to ask Colleen, because I'm trying to workshop this a little. Do you think like football is back now?
No, it's the summer. The summer is starting.
Summer of Connie is about to begin.
It's literally March 4th. We're so far from the summer.
It's not the start of the league year yet, the new league year, so it's not back. We're still at the end of the year.
Feels pretty back to me.
March 12th.
Like, we had a lot of news today, so much so we're putting this show right out. So I think we're going to be now in the cadence of putting these shows out in the late afternoon West Coast time, because why wait? The news might get blown up.
Give the people what they want.
Yeah, let's just let it out there. Let's not worry about the people. It's like, oh, you get more downloads if you do it in the morning. Or I just like the consistency. You wake
Really
up and
getting in the
it's there.
weeds here.
What a bad boy. Doesn't care about downloads.
Really excited. Ollie Connolly and Patrick Claybon on our next show. We're going to talk about free agents to look at and all the news. I guess
Football
it's
is not back.
It's not back.